This is Jet Disler, and welcome to The Piano Maven, your friendly podcast guide to piano recordings. Well, what can you say about Art Tatum, who, by critical consensus, was considered to be the greatest virtuoso among jazz pianists? When you hear Art Tatum for the first time, you first notice the most dazzling rapid runs that go up and down the keyboard and that they're tossed off with seemingly no effort. And then you notice a light yet clearly defined and transparent touch that makes most other pianists sound thick, including classical pianists. And you also notice Art Tatum's incredible sense of rhythmic equilibrium and a fullness of texture that still gives the impression of showing the air in between the notes. I think that's something that is easier to hear than to perceive it through my talking about it. And also his unbelievable harmonic sense. My goodness, his harmonic imagination is just beyond belief. When Art Tatum first came on the scene as a soloist in the early 1930s, his recorded performances tended to be flashy, show-off pieces with hundreds of ideas converging all at once at rapid speed and packed with some of the fastest and most accurate stride piano passages ever captured by a recording device. But by the late 1930s, Tatum's style had become, less hyper and more solidly swinging, and along with the razzle-dazzle, you had more strategic silences, and you had more rhythmic momentum generated by implication, where syncopation came more and more into play. And, of course, the harmonic imagination that I talked about before. Some of Tatum's best early recordings were the solos that he made for American Decca in the late 1930s and in 1940. He plays Harold Arlen's song Get Happy with a long introduction where the left hand plays nothing but a syncopated drone on F natural. And this continues through when Tatum states the actual theme, and then the second chorus breaks out into joyous stride piano. And there's also Tatum's recording from 1940 of Sweet Lorraine, where you have this easy lope that's often interrupted by wonderful fast runs and sly quotes from popular songs. And then there's Tiger Rag, which is a stride piano tour de force. And he recorded that for Columbia or Brunswick, I think, in 1933. I think there's also a 1932 recording. Yes, there is. But the Decca version I like so much better because it just swings more and there's a lightness and a lilt that I really love. However, the Art Tatum recordings that I really want to recommend to you, and these are the Tatum recordings that I think you should hear first if you've never heard Art Tatum before, are the solo piano sides that he made for the Capitol label in 1949. I think by and large, I would even call these the best recorded examples of Art Tatum on record. First of all, his harmonic palette has incrementally increased since 9 years earlier, if you can believe that. And there's a lot more rhythmic syncopation and lots of interplay in between the hands. There's more contrast and there's more momentum. And also, the engineering of these Capitol recordings captured Tatum's wonderful tone to better effect than in any of his recordings up to then. Now, Tatum made an extensive series of solo recordings for Norman Granz between 1953 and 1955, and these have amazing things, although sometimes the solos tend to ramble a bit. But I think the Capitol recordings are models of proportion and rhythmic tension, and they always seem to surprise you with incredible details, no matter how many times you listen. For example, his amazing way with Willow Weep for Me as it unfolds and also that extraordinary Aunt Hagar's Blues, the W.C. Handy piece. And that recording of Aunt Hagar's Blues has so many cool rhythmic sleights of hand that sometimes you might get lost as you're listening, but Tatum never derails. He never gets lost. There are wonderful versions of Blue Skies and Dancing in the Dark, and there's a really irreverent and even kind of rabble-rousing version of Sweet Lorraine that is quite playful, much more so than the Decca recording. So Art Tatum's 1949 solos for Capitol have floated around on numerous reissues, legitimate or otherwise. But there is an authorized edition. It's part of a 2-CD set containing Tatum's complete Capitol recordings. You get all of the 1949 solos, which also include selections that were not issued until years after Tatum's death, like Tenderly and How High the Moon. And you also get some amazing 1952 recordings with the Art Tatum Trio, with guitarist Everett Barksdale and bassist Slam Stewart. Slam Stewart, by the way, was one of the most in-demand bass players of the 1940s and early 1950s, and he was famous for bowing his solos while singing along with the solos in unison an octave higher. And on these trio sides, Tatum's technique is on incendiary form. I mean, he's almost hyper. It's almost like he just doesn't seem like he can wait to unleash the fastest runs in the West, and even to the point of playing over his colleagues. If you take their recording of Anton Rubinstein's Melody in F, which goes at quite a clip, and Tatum goes absolutely bonkers, it's so much fun to listen to. But those 1949 solos really exemplify Tatum's ability to create tension while sounding absolutely relaxed and totally effortless. This is Jed Disler, and you've been listening to The Piano Maven, your friendly podcast guide to piano recordings. And thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to being with you for the next episode.